Welcome back to the Road to National series. In today's episode, I'm going to take you through a max effort upper workout. So first things first, my max effort variation for this week is a close grip 15-degree incline bench press. So I like to often do close grip versions of a press and then do the wider grip variation the week after, because it transfers a lot of confidence into that wider variation. I know I'm going to be able to do more than the close grip. So my previous best on this was 127.5 kilos, which I beat there with 130 kilos. And then here I was attempting 135 kilos, which had a slight sticking point, but I managed to hit fairly comfortably. And I felt like if I hit everything right, I could probably get 140 kilos. So that's what I attempted next. Now, unfortunately, this just got stuck at probably the most disadvantaged position for the triceps, so that's why I failed it, and I was fine with that. I'd come away with a 7.5 kilo PR, which I was happy with. And next week, going into the regular 15-degree incline, I'll try and do that, and I'll probably be able to hit 140 kilos. So that's what I meant. I've got a lot of confidence going into that now, and my previous best on a normal grip 15-degree incline was only 135 kilos. So I matched that with my close grip this week. So the first accessory here, I decided to keep the bench inclined, and I was doing some heavy incline JM presses. So I normally use about 70 kilos for my working weight on JM presses, and an incline is a slightly harder variation, particularly if you're trying to flare those elbows slightly out and forward and keep the bar over your chin at minimum. Really, I sort of start with the bar over my eyes, and then as I fatigue, I bring it down and over my chin. So successful first set at 80 kilos. I didn't know, I felt like maybe I'd only be able to get like 3 to 5 reps, but I managed to get 8. Unfortunately, on the 9th rep, it hit my safety spotter arms, which completely killed all of my power. So I failed the 9th rep because of that. But on this second set, I believe I'm able to hit the 9th rep. But literally just about. I think it was a massive grind, and I just about lock it out. And my triceps are feeling pretty sore at the time of recording this. It is a couple of days after. So if that's a measure of the success of hitting the triceps, then they were trained successfully. So the next accessory here was neutral mag grip lat pull down. So this is probably the grip that I am the strongest in, and I went for the heaviest I've done lat pull downs, which is 220 pounds, and I think I managed to get sets of 8. So I was using a bit of body sway. I am not against doing that. I try and start the reps out as strict as possible, but if there is a little bit of body momentum, it isn't too bad. The main thing is for the lats to be placed under tension and trained effectively. Your body doesn't actually care where the rest of the position is. It doesn't go, oh, that was bad form, so I'm not going to grow. It just knows that tension was placed on the muscle. And here I just did a drop set. So the weight dropped down to 120 pounds halfway through the second set, and I was able to grind out, I think, almost another 10 reps at 120 pounds, which completely burnt out the muscle. When you train to failure with lighter weight, it is much harder. It'll start burning with many reps to go, and you just have to keep pushing. It's more mentally challenging, versus heavier accessories don't really burn the same. They're just physically challenging. You'll hit a wall and you won't be able to push any harder. But the reason I love drop sets and my drop set pins are you're able to train both. So I normally do a drop set on the second set if I can on a weight stack machine. So the next accessory here was chest press, and this is the heaviest I've ever been able to go, because if you look at the weight stack there, you'll be able to see I have added a 10 kilo plate as well, because I invested in a gym pin so that now I can overload this exercise heavier than the weight stack will allow. So I'm doing 273 pounds here. I've previously done 260, which is the heaviest the weight stack will allow. And as you get heavier on this machine, the cables and the pulleys, like the discs that rotate, I don't know the word for them, they are plastic and get worn a bit. So as you get heavier, it actually gets harder than even the weight says. So this probably felt like 280, 290 pounds, because now there's extra friction in the machine. If you have a very high quality machine with all like aluminium and metal pulleys and cables, then you won't get that. But my machine does do that, and some of the pulleys really do need replacing. I'm debating investing in that and replacing all of them with metal ones, but that was the heaviest I've ever done a chest press, and it was probably even heavier than it said because of the friction. And I was unable to do a drop set there, for example, because I was using the gym pin. I couldn't then do a drop set as well. I don't think it would work with the drop set pins. Maybe it would. I'll give it a try next time. So the next accessory here is loo raises, and 15 kilos here is the heaviest I've ever gone on them. Now I've managed to get a set of 4 with them before, and then I think I've done drop sets. Here I instead decided to do supersets, so I think I got 5 proper loo raises, and then I did some lateral raises and a small isometric at the end. This really targets the shoulders, and if you saw my last video, the last deload workout of last week, I said I attributed a lot of my increased overhead strength to this exercise. Rather than a normal lateral raise where you stop parallel to the ground, doing that extra range of motion really gets a massive contraction in the delt. I find that these target the delts way better than just doing lateral raises, and once you've done them, you can then superset them like I'm doing in this workout with lateral raises, because the delts have been pre-fatigued from the loo raises, so you're definitely going to target them with the lateral raises, versus I normally find that my traps tend to take over if I just do lateral raises. So if you've watched this series at all, you'll see I literally used to do lateral raises all the time. It was my favorite delt exercise, and then one day I did loo raises and bang, I've never gone back since. It is revolutionary, and I advise you try that in your workouts. So the next accessory here is bicep curls or preacher curls on the pad. Now this 25 kilos is the joint heaviest I've ever gone on this exercise, and I think I've only managed to be able to get sets of 4 on this before. However, this workout I tried to dig deep and get sets of 6. Now it's not entirely comparable workout to workout, because this exercise is largely dependent on how much I straighten my elbow. I try to go to the same depth every time, but sometimes I could have an absolute grinder of a 4th rep, and if I just don't go as deep on the 5th rep, literally an inch or 2 off depth, the 5th rep could be really easy, for example. So this rep here I went really deep on, and was, I can't remember, was it the 4th or 5th rep? I wasn't counting there, but this next rep there, you see that was much easier, and then this final rep I went slightly deeper and was challenging again. So the difficulty of each rep is dependent on how deep I go. If I went like half depth, for example, I could go way heavier. I think I could use like the 40 kilo for partials, and particularly in that top position, you're not really challenging the bicep because the weight's just grounding down through your arm. But in the bottom position, it is very challenging, and the hardest position, of course, is when the forearm is parallel to the ground. That is where the force being applied to the bicep is the biggest, because the turning moment is the biggest. If you understand turning moments and know about that, that's what it is. But basically, when your arm's parallel to the floor, it's in the hardest position. So right here, that was an absolute grind for the 6th. It was so challenging on that right hand side, and that is, like I say, because I went that little bit deeper and I went, oh no, I don't think I'm going to be able to get that up. But fought hard and managed to get it up, and my biceps today are absolutely wrecked. It's 2 days after, so that's around when DOMs normally peak. This was my Monday workout, and I'm recording this at the Wednesday, and massive soreness in the biceps, which I don't normally get. I've only really got that from high rep sets before, so I was pretty glad about that. It must mean that I'm doing something right. That doesn't mean it's the only measure of success, by the way. Your muscles being sore, it doesn't mean that if they're not sore, you've not trained effectively. You could have done, particularly for strength. I think that's sort of more of a gauge for bodybuilding, is muscle soreness, but it doesn't need to be there. But I find that every time I do feel muscle soreness, it's a really clear indicator, okay, I did push hard. So the final exercise here is weighted GHD sit-ups, but they're not GHD sit-ups like CrossFitters do where they touch the floor with their arms when they go back. I just like to use the GHD because I can obviously go deeper than the floor would allow. If I was doing these on the floor, I couldn't have my body go all the way back and get a great stretch on the abs. And again, my abs are really sore from this. This is the heaviest I've gone. I have used a 10 kilo dumbbell once before, but this was a big step up, and I think it's way more applicable to powerlifting is doing much heavier ab training, because really the reason I'm doing ab training is to try and increase my maximal core strength and my brace strength so that I don't cave forward in things like a squat and a deadlift, and so that my brace and my body's just really solid for me to bench off when I'm benching in a competition. So these felt very effective. Now, it's not quite as heavy as it could be because I was just holding them over my abs. I think in future I'll use a lighter weight but hold it on my forehead, and that will feel even heavier because it'll be a larger arc and a bigger turning moment. So that is it for today's video. I hope you did in fact enjoy the video. If you did, drop it a like, drop it a comment, subscribe, click the bell, and have a great day.